It is my sincere pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon, Cordell Carter. And Cordell has such a remarkable career and has led such a remarkable life of impact that I am going to read from my notes to make sure that I don't miss key things. So Cordell brings more than 20 years to his pursuit of a society and organizational cultures where everyone belongs and has equitable opportunities to thrive. He is currently the executive director of the Aspen Institute Socrates program, and he is the founding director of the Aspen Institute's Project on Belonging. He is also the founder of the Festival of the Diaspora, a Columbia-based convener of diasporic communities across the Americas. And before his current roles, he held leadership roles with TechTown, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Seattle Public Schools, the Business Roundtable, the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, and the IBM Corporation, and on and on. I want to say that he is a regular fixture in Indiana, a friend to many organizations, well known as a speaker on ethical use of technology, entrepreneurship and innovation, and of course, inclusion and belonging. He's also an alum of the University of Notre Dame, so we claim him as a native son. Go Irish. Go Irish. Go Irish. Season's off to a good start. Yep. And so is our afternoon. Cordell?
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing? Let's try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to get myself settled here. It's an absolute pleasure to be back in Indiana. I'm here quite a bit. Mainly, I'm pulling hard for my rising senior daughter to at least consider an Indiana school. I took her to my alma mater, Notre Dame, recently for a tour. And let me set the stage for you. Number one, she was born in my third-year law school at Notre Dame. My tax professor's wife delivered her. She delivered all the babies. They're Catholic. There's a lot of babies my year at Notre Dame. So she is essentially, I think, a domer. So she has on her combat boots, her MC Hammer pants. She doesn't know what MC Hammer is, but she's wearing his pants. Her manga t-shirt and purple hair. And the tour guide, I'm looking at him like, hey, wear lungs, maybe lay out the football. He went straight in on a football weekend. I'm like, dude, did you not see your customer here? Does she look like she's into football? In fact, I've been banned from watching football because I would curse so much during the games. And so my wife got rid of cable and all of that like years ago. So I haven't watched a football game in a very long time. Anyhow, TMI. How are you all doing this morning? Great. So I am absolutely delighted to be here for your convening. PLCs is what you all are, professional learning community. Communities of practice, if you will. I spent a lot of time in K-12, and PLCs is how you move the needle. You're looking at data. You say, okay, let's make a data-driven decision on how to change this thing that we want to change, and then you go about it. So I applaud you all for pulling this together. It's really hard to do across competitive enterprises. So I applaud you. That's a Midwest thing, okay? That's a Midwest nice is real, okay? This is why I'm so excited that she's considering schools in the Midwest. So this topic of inclusive tech workforce is super important to me. I have seen a lot of things. I tell folks I'm much older than I look. The melanin definitely helps. Like, don't hate, exfoliate. That's my new term. And so I've seen the trends. I started my career with IBM. I came fresh out of Carnegie Mellon, and I was just all fired up to do some things that you all never heard of. And that was transition from client-server environments. I'm sorry, from mainframes to client-server environments. So Fortran, all that stuff. I had to learn how to code that in 1999. Some of you weren't born in 1999, okay? And so that was my first project. Was Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin. Remember Tommy Thompson? He was as insane in person as he appears on television. But he was doing some really interesting things with welfare to work. And that was my first foray into technology. Besides the Atari and then doing the minor coding as a kid in the 80s, working with IBM and Deloitte, that was my entree. It was right in Madison, Wisconsin, where I started my career. And to see where we are now and to have a digital native in my home is baffling. Normal coursework includes coding for her. I mean, she's been coding since she was 5 years old. It's just baffling to me, but that's where the world is. So this is the environment that we're in. It's shaped by innovation. It's shaped by this rapidly changing environment all the time. I have a lot of respect for folks in the private sector because your competitive environment is unlike others. Because people are trying to eat your lunch every innovation cycle. And innovation cycle just gets smaller and smaller each cycle. So the innovation cycle itself is innovating. This is a baffling environment to be in. So you have to stay on your toes all the time. And so those of you all involved in talent, at either recruiting or upskilling, whatever you're doing, your job is all the more challenging because of the environment that you're in. So let's spend some time talking about this environment that you're in. So there are about 336 million people in the USA. Depending on how you count. So let's be clear about this. This is census data. So I'm pretty sure they don't account for some other things that perhaps many of us do. But every 15 seconds, we have a net replacement of a person. That's the deal, all right? Every 15 seconds. And 336 million people. We have about 170 million people in the workforce. Okay, and that means actively engaged in either part-time work at a minimum, all right? 21 million of those 170 million are in the tech workforce. And this is everyone from IT support at the public library to your super duper $500,000 a year coders at Facebook and Airbnb in Silicon Valley. And so Mission 41K is focused on about 0.0002% of the total workforce. I think that's doable. Personally, that's a very small number. 41,000. What does that really mean to a place like Indianapolis? Well, it's game changing. And I must applaud you all again for 5.6% growth year over year. That's pretty impressive. You all may not be impressed by it, but I am. I travel a lot, and everyone is saying the exact opposite. Maybe it's negative 5.6%, and they certainly don't have rooms like this. Even at the associations, they don't. Because people are they're so focused on poaching talent from each other that they don't see the big picture. All right. So I need you all to rise up because I'll be talking about some trends and then we'll go back down to Indiana specifically. So with 3.8% unemployment, basically, if you're unemployed now, you're either differently abled or you don't want to work. But there are thousands of jobs available, thousands. Every year, there's 100,000 job deficit in tech workers. It keeps building. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates with about 10 million open jobs. And just the tech sector, 10 million. Doesn't even factor into these other numbers I mentioned. So just your sector alone, you have that much unemployment. So if people want a job, it's there. Now they have to be upskilled. I'm with a company called Skillstar on their board, and they're an upskiller. Okay, so if it's AWS, if it's I don't know, Salesforce, whatever it is, they have a type of work. CompTIA does it as well. CompTIA, yeah. Shout out to CompTIA. In fact, they started that whole notion of upskilling. So everyone is leveraging your model. Bravo, CompTIA. And so there's a lot of factors going into this. But let's talk about some mega trends, if you will. And because your goal is to build a workforce that's inclusive. And I must say this, I'm not a professional diversity, equity, inclusion person. I showed that to my CEO 3 years ago when he asked me to launch the Belonging Project. He actually asked me to launch an external D&I program. And I said, that's really interesting. Perhaps you should find a specialist because that's not what I do. He says, well, I need your help because you build programs. So build us a program that actually fits what we do. And so my research, my landscape analysis indicated that D&I is it's a strategy without an objective, meaning where are we going with this? Nixon started this in '66 with a census of federal contractors. And from that census become an annual compliance exercise. It's gotten a little more strategic, but I think where the puck is going, to borrow a hockey term, is this notion that we're all out to build a society where everyone belongs. Like, so that's number one. You belong. Everybody in this room, you belong. Bravo. Now, thriving is something different, because thriving for you is different from maybe at different starting points, different inputs, different experiences. And so the very best for you may be mid-level. The very best for me may be CEO. The point is we have an opportunity, multiple opportunities to thrive. Okay? So that's the big picture where we're going. Now, let's talk about the D in D&I for a second, because I have some news for you. The last majority white high school graduating class will be what year? Take a guess. Take a guess. 35 over here? 25. 2025. What year is it, Bob? Yeah. The D is self-evident. Okay? Now the D is going to mean something different. It's going to mean age diversity. It's going to mean ideological diversity. That's a big issue for me. I'm at a nonpartisan nonprofit that people are self-selected to. They're always the same people. Always the same people. That's a problem. It's not a fun dialogue if we all think the same. It's geographic diversity. And I think it's going to come up also this notion of ableness, a variety of diversity. So there's actual power in it, and there's multiple dimensions. So I encourage you all as professionals in this space to think of diversity in its broadest sense. It's not just based on one's external appearance. As I like to remind my brown child how privileged she is, and she doesn't get it because that's her normal. It was not my normal. I have a very different childhood than hers, and my childhood was amazing. Just hers is so much better, you know? So I guess we can all tap into that. But there's something unique about diversity now in the workforce. For the first time in American history, we're only 247 years old as a country. We have 5 generations in the workforce at the same time. 5. Okay? So anywhere from my parents that are boomers, even when my parents retired 3 years ago, they're both 70 years old. Their 80-year-old colleagues were the ones wishing them well. They're still working. And they're part of what they call the silent generation. All right? People born between the ages of 1928 and 1945. Then you have the boomers. You have folks like myself, the Gen Xers. You have the millennials, Gen Z, and the alphas. I happen to employ the last 3. So I'm Gen X. I have 1 millennial, I have 2 Gen Z, and I have 4 alphas. A whole speech could be written about the alphas. Woo! Serenity now. Serenity now. I had an alpha issue this morning. I just stopped looking at WhatsApp. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just let go today. I'm going to let go and let God, because I'm going to choke all of them. At any rate, you all can't do it in your reports, all right? Tapping into untapped these different talent pools. Now, this idea of these 5 generations, I think all of us should be making a run on AARP. They have an active senior program. My father is being recruited more now. He had a very specialized knowledge of naval architecture. These are former military folks. They really care. They're patriotic. They really care about the country. You can't learn the complex piping of naval aircraft carriers at Georgia Tech, at Carnegie Mellon. Like, you may figure out how the pipes work, but when you understand it, if you do a valve wrong, you literally blow someone's face off. And that's almost accidents happen, right? You have to have a personal experience. And no 25-year-olds can have a personal experience on a naval ship, especially one in war theater. But a 72-year-old would. It's likely he or she, they were there. They were on the ship. They may have seen this horrible thing happen. And so I think 2 things. One is we obviously going to do upskilling on the lower end in terms of age. On the high end, these folks that have like aged out, if you will, they left, they maxed out their 401k or whatever pensions actually at their generation. Let's call them back and figure out like, hey, how much would you like to engage? And they negotiate really well now. Debbie says, you know what? I'll come in when I feel like it. How about that? And they're like, okay, Mr. Carter, we'll take that. Who negotiates like that? Seniors can. Skilled seniors can. So find some skilled seniors among you. And so the diverse perspectives, this is something super important to me. I happen to be right of center, okay? And I grew up in a very, very conservative environment. And I've seen the power of just different perspectives as it relates to business issues. Started my career at IBM. We're working in the federal space, went to Deloitte, work in state and local space. Our value systems are sometimes collide. Now, you think we're talking about mainframe conversion here. How are your values at play? Well, there are end users involved here, okay? And so you have to make it easy for people to, if that's your value set. But not having the conversation will create a solution that doesn't work for the only people who just created it. If it only worked for the people who did it, they understand how it works. Well, I was with Deloitte. What does it matter what I think? It matters what those customers think. And so having a diversity of opinion, a diversity of experience is, I think, key to an inclusive workforce. That's the point of it all, right? You want people to make sure they belong. Well, let's build something they can actually use, all right? I used to have a boss at IBM that says, if you start a sentence with, it would be cool if I'm firing you, okay? Because that is not in the business requirements. Would it be cool? No. What does the customer need, right? Right? So this idea of fostering different perspectives, super, super important. Now, I did not grow up in a hood, okay? I was military, we moved around quite a bit, but the vast majority of my family did. And so I loved hanging out with my rougher cousins. They would teach me like all these new profane words, and I would get like access. They had cable at their homes. It's just a very different experience because, my dad didn't play that at all. But they were also pretty adept at solving problems. They were basically adults when we were like 10, right? They just had different experiences. They talked to adults like they were adult. I couldn't grasp what they were doing and how they were doing it. But now I look at them and their lives are reformed. They're better people. They've taken those skills and used them for business. And so they're as innovative as any innovator you would see in the Valley, anyone you would see downtown Indianapolis. Why am I saying that? Ladies and gentlemen, you are talent searchers. Your job is to fish and keep fishing. Sometimes you got to replenish the lake. The question is, where are you fishing? Where are you fishing? Do you look at West Washington Ave and say, you know what? No potential employee of ours are there. There's no way. That's a pond that's not worthy of fishing. I'm just asking. I don't know if that's true or not. But I would ask y'all to think about that for a second. Because here's the deal. At 3.8% unemployment, there is no fat. There's no fat. You can't immigrate your way out of this. There's only 65,000 folks you can get on H-1B. And guess what? The biggest tech firms are going to have the vast majority of it. Why? They have more lawyers. So they're going to win. Intel's going to win every year. Okay? They're going to win every year. My wife is an immigrant from France, and she was on H-1B when we came out of Carnegie Mellon. And when I proposed, her CEO came to my house with a bottle of champagne and just hugged me. I'm like, what's going on? Are you firing her? He's like, no, you just opened up another H-1B. I said, you owe me more than champagne, dude. At least $15,000 in legal fees. My point is, we got to love the ones we with. To love the ones that we have. That's like a Luther Vandross strategy, the talent development. Love the ones you're with. We can't be with the ones we want. Let's focus on the ones that we have. And there's a lot of people out here that have resident ability to solve problems. They're super innovative, and we got to give them a better use case for their talents, a better use case. And you all hold those use cases. The question is, what pathways are you acknowledging here? Which leads me to the next point, this idea of innovating the way we build job descriptions. And does it really require a four-year degree, or are you looking for someone that can code? If you're looking for someone to code, go to a coding school. More importantly, how about you sponsor folks to go to a coding school, and then you have first right of refusal to that talent. I see it. Thank you so much, Amen Corner. You can clap if you want. But you're in a war for talent. You can't keep 5.6% every year unless you start doing some different things. You may have gotten lucky year one, or maybe Jenna's just an amazing leader. Maybe that Midwest Nice is so overpowering that 5.6% is normal. I doubt it. I'm not saying I doubt you. I'm just saying I doubt it. So let's think about what are those other strategies. And this idea of building stronger relationships with your customers and your stakeholders, listening to your customer. I like to remind folks in DC, it's a lot of conversation about, oh, the company is woke and this. I said, listen, my friend, let's talk about Jamie Dimon for a second. He has billions of dollars and stock options that will vest probably out that he's no longer with us, and JP Morgan. Don't you think he knows what his customers will look like 35 years from now? Is it not in his financial interest to make sure he knows what they look like? So if you know where the puck is going, why wouldn't you prepare the goal now? The net is here. Come on, puck. Right? And so this is a data-driven decision. It looks like Black pathways and Hispanic pathways, but they're really speaking to a future customer set that you don't see because you don't have geopolitical strategists that work for you. He does. Okay, you know who else does? The U.S. Armed Forces. Some of the best geopolitical strategists in the world. You know, the loudest voices about climate change in this country are from the U.S. military. They're not allowed to say it out loud. In the Senate, they can, not in the House. It's not a political thing, ladies and gentlemen. This is about business. This is about cash. The things that we really value in this country. Let's keep it real, okay? We serve men, and that's okay to an extent. That's okay, right? You like what you like. And so if you're serious about it, if you're serious about maximizing your potential, why wouldn't you plan for a future you know is coming? The demographic cliff is here. So plan for the customers that you'll have, not the ones you have today. All right? And that's listening to your customers. I'm almost done. I'm going to keep going. Create a culture of empathy. I've never seen in the last 10 years as much talk in private sector circles about empathy as I'm hearing now. And I don't know if that we are more accepting of people struggling with mental health. Maybe the employee assistance programs are showing some value, but we are now having all staff meetings about empathy. All staff meetings. Now, what does that mean, really? If you think about where you work, right? And your company name? Employee ND? Employee ND. Employee ND wants to keep all your employees, correct? The average cost to replace an employee is 1.5 of their salary. Let's say the average salary is $70,000. So you're looking at $135,000 because you didn't create an environment where they felt like they belong, where people didn't care about their life outside of work. Like, what's cheaper for you? What's more effective for you? To be a human, or to say, look, you're a revenue-generating entity. I need you to produce revenue and get out. I'm gonna go with door number one. Okay, I'll go to door one. It is cheaper to keep. Almost always, that's true. More importantly, think about some of the organizational issues, the unique facets of your organizational culture. That's probably not included in onboarding. It's impossible to understand the quirks, why everyone talks to Cheryl when they come in. Why do you do that? Well, if you don't, you'll never get a meeting with the CEO. You wouldn't know that. You have to be in the mix to know that, right? All of us have quirks just like that in our organizations. And so it's incumbent to keep the folks you have and add new people there that fit. Okay, great. We'll move on. Ethical considerations. Ethics are big for us at the Aspen Institute. It was founded by leaders that were focused on preventing World War III. In 1949, as legend has it, the gentleman that had a global monopoly on cardboard boxes, his name was Walter Petke, German-American based in Chicago, wanted to create a space where men could find their common humanity. In 1949, he did mean just dudes. It didn't change until my program started coming around in the late 90s. We were a little more inclusive. They realized this thing called the internet was going to change the world. And if the Institute didn't change its practices, this thing wouldn't last, this thing called the Institute. And so now we have pathways for younger talent. But ethics, seeing the world in its greatness and trying to muddle through, acknowledging that I may not win every transaction and that's okay, has been one of the forefront principles of every leadership program that we do. We're going to talk about ethics, drilling it into you that you have an obligation to the greater good. Plain and simple. Like, we are not on this place where we're just here like a whisper at a time, 3 score and 10, right? So you have to do some things that are additive to the whole, additive to humanity. And ethics is a way of guiding there. I'm very concerned about the lack of ethics in public education and business. Like there is a such thing as right and wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now, what does that mean for tech people in tech sector? Isn't tech all about can? There's concerns that we have about AI. In fact, I was just with a company 2 days ago called IntelliHire. And it's like a AI interface. You tell them what type of job you want, and they start interviewing with this metallic, futuristic voice. And they see you, they're looking at your face and your expressions. They can tell if you're not telling the truth. It freaked me out. But I think it'd be really, really cool because it removes bias, right? You get scored, and then score goes to company blind, and then you pick those people you're going to interview based on the score. So I like the way they're going with it. But I was concerned about the interface. That was concerning. Now, there are other use cases for AI that are very concerning because people are focused on can. Would it be cool if? And not thinking about those broader implications of the technology. It's something we all have to be thoughtful about. So, as I mentioned, I do get around the country and the hemisphere quite a bit. And my audiences are typically business folks or faith folks, my people. And I've suggested to many people, especially in the U.S., about this notion of quality of life becoming the ultimate measure. Maybe because I'm in my late 40s, and I know my mortality is a real thing now. I know I'm not invincible because my knee hurts every morning. I really care about my day. Like, how am I feeling? What's the weather like? What are my food options? What are my entertainment options? I have a lot of friends in the Valley, Silicon Valley. They're paid extraordinarily well. They also have some of the highest costs, like just for the living, the commutes, 2-hour commutes in the Google van each way. I don't care if it's Wi-Fi and coffee and bagels, dude. That sucks. 80% of our adult lives are spent working. I'm a firm believer that time shouldn't suck. Maybe 20%. But 80% of the time is awful? No, I'm good. That's not how I want to live. I suspect that's how most people don't want to live. So with that in mind, you start thinking about the value proposition of a place like Indianapolis, right? Now, the average salary of tech workers in I would say the 8 top states for attracting them is between $120,000 and $100,000. Can anyone take a guess on what the average tech worker salary here in Indiana is? It's not $100,000. So let's start there. 76,000. Sorry, 78,000. Okay, and this is 2021 numbers. Yet and still, compared to the top 8 states, you're winning. Why do you think that is? I have a theory, and that theory is that people want the American dream so. They want a house. They want Fido. They have a fenced yard. They want a garage. They want a place to spread out a little bit. They want some room. The top 8 states for tech workers are unaffordable. They're unaffordable. You'll be living in an apartment for a very long time. And with housing prices increasing like that, almost like they're inelastic, they're just going straight up. Affordability becomes a big issue, especially if you want to have a family. If you're a single person, whatever. But, affordability is a big issue. This is why I think Indiana is going to win, ultimately. Places like Indiana, I've said the Midwest in general. Now, let's talk about climate for a second. I know I don't say this out loud because it freaks people out. So if you look at, there's something called climate belts across the world. It's the same weather all around the globe along a certain belt, right? About a 2,000-mile band, if you will, all around the Earth. If you're projecting out 50 years to 2073, the most fertile and temperate belt is going to cut right across the Great Lakes region. Okay? So the land that we're on now is going to be worth the same as, say, San Francisco in 50 years. So buy as much as possible for your grandkids. You also have the largest supply of fresh water in the world. Okay? So aside from the climate issues that are coming, affordability is the primary issue right now. Also, this idea of livability. Is this a pleasant place to be? Can I still get access to a Broadway show? Can I have some decent food? That isn't steak. I love steak, by the way. St. Elmo's, the Wagyu sliders. Oh my gosh. Every night I'm there. It's not my way. At any rate, so you can have a pretty amazing existence here. All right. Now, I've lived in 8 different cities in my adult life, 8 different cities. And I keep coming back to the Midwest, either from Milwaukee to Indianapolis. Anywhere in between, I'll be good. I'm good. I can do that. I've done the East Coast. I've done the West Coast. I have a house in Seattle. I have no intention of ever going back. Rent that bad boy out. Let them pay the exorbitant fees. Because I can't afford to live there because of the type of work I like to do. It's typically nonprofit or the faith space. And I just, look, it doesn't pay well, but I'm fulfilled by it. Other people are making the same choice. And I declared they will give up $300,000 in Silicon Valley to make 150 here and have a much better life. So lead with your value proposition. You have a life here, okay? So we started this conversation about inclusive tech workforce, this notion of, how do we grow in a way that reflects society? And I just want to end with a story that just happened to me this is last Christmas. We were in Athens, and I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, and so is my daughter. And so I want to take her there before, she leaves the house. And we're in in this place called Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi, the ancient Oracle of Delphi. And I'm looking at the Temple of Apollo. Now, mind you, I'm thinking of leaving the Aspen at this time. In fact, I had already announced it that I was leaving. And I'm in this moment of indecision. There's a lot going on, but I'm smiling on the outside, right? And I'm looking at the walls, and the tour guide is telling the stories about the different walls. You can tell who has been there based on the wall construction. So the very top, that first wall, all marble stone with crosses on them. So we know these are the Christians. So some 1500 AD, 1500 years ago. So they started 500 AD. That's when they took over the site. The next one, you'll see lots of mortar, the Roman cement. That's impossible to recreate, by the way. Roman cement, lots of filled stones all over the place. That's the Romans that took over from the ancient Minoans. And then you see that ancient wall from 3,500 years ago. And it's no cement, stones all of irregular size and shape, yet it's still standing. In fact, all the ruins that you'll see in Delphi are from that first period. This is a place of great earthquakes. It was 3 tremors while we were there. We were only there for an hour, and we experienced 3 tremors. So imagine what has happened over the last 3,500 years. And so I'm sitting there looking at the wall. Remember, I'm a PK. I'm looking for a sermon and everything, right? Something to inspire. And I'm like, wow, the wall where we were forced to conform, the Christian wall, was the first to fall when an earthquake came. Because no amount of cement is going to stop an earthquake, okay? You're going to fall. You're going to crumble, even if it's marble. The next wall, the Roman wall, where they said, it doesn't matter what you look like, you're Roman now. Here's a Roman cement. This is the power of our culture. It also fell. But that ancient wall, where they took a time and observed wood floating on the shore, said, earthquakes are just like waves. We probably should build something a little different than what others have done. So they would have found a place for every stone. And the differences in the stone, the diversity of the stones is what make the wall strong. Because when a wave comes, it moves with the wall. The wall just moves with it. It continues on being a wall. And so I had to ask myself the question I'm going to ask you to ask yourself. What wall am I building? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm crying. Just a little tears, right? And my daughter says, Dad, what's wrong? I said, honey, do you see the sermon in this wall? She's like, you're going to be weird. I'm going to go with Mom. So that's right, I'm going to be weird. But I left that place fired up about belonging. I am convinced that our differences is what makes us strong. That's the true value proposition of this great place we call the United States of America. Look at this room. Take a minute to look around this room. Look at the different faces here. That which unites us is in our wallet. We're Americans, ladies and gentlemen. So I thank you all so much for your time. May we all build a society where we belong. Thank you. You're not done with me yet. We have a panel coming. If we can ask the panelists to please come to the stage. We're going to pass the mic here. So we have Tiffany, Maurice, and Arwa. Is that correct? Fantastic, fantastic. So first we start off, I hand the mic to Tiffany, we just go down. Just could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your organization?
Thank you. I'm Tiffany Trusty. I'm an employee of Eli Lilly, but I brought the HR expert to answer those questions today. I'm also a champion of diversity, especially for women in STEM, and on the board for Women in High Tech, and also a National Center for Women in Information Technology for Indiana. So tech 3 ways.
Hello all, my name is Elwa Galawan. I work at Infosys. I lead the diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Midwest. Infosys is an IT consulting company. I'm also on the board with Women in High Tech and Innovation.
Good afternoon. I'm Maurice Taylor with Eli Lilly and Company, and I am Executive Director of Talent Attraction. So I'll help keep Tiffany out of trouble.
Hold on to that mic. Hold on to the mic. I should say, how important is tech-related job growth to Eli Lilly?
Yeah, I think you said it in your presentation. Every job that we have with Lilly includes some aspect of technology, and the more that we advance, the more that data becomes super imperative in our jobs. Tech is becoming more and more, and so even in functions and areas where you say, would you need a tech background or tech knowledge or tech curiosity? The answer for us, I think, is yes, you do.
Oh, same question.
As most of you know, that Infosys is a technology company, so it's very essential to our growth and success to hire and attract talent, young talent, and just upskilling them and always continuous learning at Infosys. Becky?
Well, of course, at Eli Lilly, I'm a product manager in the digital office. And so technology is at the heart of everything we do. But in the NCWIT and in the women in high tech spaces, getting diverse talent and moving those needles that Dennis was talking about earlier has been our mission for a long time. And when those needles move, there's still the minority in the workforce. And so having a support network to support them once they get there is another cause to our missions.
Great. And we have a new panelist for a while. He just was out for a second. If you can just introduce yourself, your company, and then answer the question, how important is tech-related job growth to your organization?
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Fuad Butt. I'm over at One America downtown. I run digital strategy and our automation practice. And how important is
Tech-related job growth.
tech-related job growth? I think it's critical in my role, but I'd like to kind of widen the aperture to say it's not just tech, right? It's across everything, because when I first joined One America, somebody asked me a question like, hey, I came in as head of digital strategy. They were like, what's your digital strategy? And I was like, well, what's the business strategy? Because the digital and technology is in service of the business, is in service of the cash register, so to speak. So a lot of what you said actually resonated with me. Hopefully we'll get to some of it, but
Great.
I think it's critical. I will make a plug for those of you that haven't seen this. There's a new book that McKinsey just sent out called Rewired, and they have a couple of chapters just on human capital. It's talking about kind of the new digital age, but just the fact that human capital is critical. Technology, to a certain extent, sometimes can be commoditized, but people cannot.
Great, great. And so I'll let whoever wants to start with this next question go over. We'll talk about inclusive practices. What specific inclusive practice have any of you implemented in your organization?
So one thing that you heard Dennis or someone speak about earlier is that we have a skills first initiative at Lilly, and we looked across the enterprise and realized to really expand our talent pools, we needed to remove the 4-year degree requirement and replace it with experience. And so that skills first initiative, we're probably about 100 individuals that we've hired over the last couple of years in the skills first initiative. And it really is a game changer because removing those degree requirements is critical to finding talent, but you also expand your diversity, and you also bring in individuals with backgrounds and styles and characteristics that you had never had before. And if you know anything about our company, we're over 146 years, 140 years of dominant culture, and to have the mix is really great, because when I started at Lilly, you basically, change who you are to be a Lilly employee, right? And we noticed that this new crop, they're not sacrificing, they're not changing who they are, but they are bringing incredible skills to the forefront and to the table. And we've benefited greatly from having those individuals with the organization. It's not perfect, we're working through it. We have some challenges, but I think it's been beneficial to the enterprise.
Great. And just a really quick aside, less than 25% of the population every year pursues post-secondary credential, whatever it is, university, trade school, you name it. And so the fact that you all are figuring out how to get to the other 75%, I think, is remarkable, given the history of the organization. So kudos to Eli and Lilly. Arwa. Inclusive practice.
Yeah, I echo that because at Infosys, we really, Infosys is authentically commitment to inclusion, because in believing of the once we have like inclusive environment starting from the leadership, it's gonna change the whole environment for the company. So I echo that, and I hope that we're working on the same mission as Eli Lilly and other companies in Indianapolis and in the Midwest.
So I have the pleasure of being a part of the Skills First Initiative, and because of the apprenticeship and the community mindedness that John Claus put in me a long time ago from 1150 Academy. I went to the Academy because I believed in that mission that he and Scott had. And I was a teacher there because they needed a girl in Albany. So I looked around and said, this is a great mission, but you need a woman here. I'll be one of your teachers and help get this started. I was deeply invested in the apprenticeship, but we didn't have a place to put them when they graduated. All the big companies didn't need our graduates. They had people knocking down their door with degrees. And the small and mid-sized companies didn't have the infrastructure that we needed to support these new, unique graduates. So when Lilly and others opened their doors for apprenticeships, I was really excited to help.
I think just to add one strategy we are undertaking is to kind of lower the barriers, if you will. I personally am bringing in non-technology people into our digital strategy automation practices, because with some of the new tooling, low code, no code environments, you don't need to be an old school program, with all respect to Fortran and the cold.
I think don't miss it.
Yeah, I mean, and not necessarily at One America, but in a previous company I was with, one of the best programmers on my team was actually a history major, just because that diversity of thought, the diversity of ideas, that's what we need. We need people. It's kind of an idea economy, if you will, right? Yes, it just helps to kind of bring those people, marry them into the team with technologists, but you don't necessarily need to be a technology person anymore to have an impact.
Right. So, bringing in an inclusive practice to an existing organization, perhaps one that's more than half of the age of our country, I wonder, to the extent you can say out loud, like, what are some of the challenges that were part of that you experience, maybe some resistance or not?
It has to be part of the culture, and it has to be supported wholeheartedly by your leadership. There's a concept of check the box, DE&I. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
Where someone wants to get a promotion, they know they have to have DEI to get it, so they sponsor something, and you can tell their heart's not in it. When that happens, the culture breaks down and the support's not there. It has to be real.
I think there's several things. I'll be brief, but I think that people believe that to get work done, you have to do it like you've always done it in the past. And especially in an environment where we have this notion of the Lilly way, right? And when you have people coming in with a different perspective, asking different questions, not conforming to the norms in terms of how they look and how they show up every day, I think that presents huge challenges. And we've had to really push with our managers and supervisors and things of that nature. We started this right at the beginning of what I call our racial justice initiative, right at the after the George Floyd murder. And so people with really good hearts, right, came to the table and said, we want to support, we want to do the right things, but it actually takes even more than a good heart, right? It takes open-mindedness, because under stress, under pressure, you're going to resort to the things that got you there, and it might not be as inclusive as you think when you think about the audience that your new employee or your new employees. And so it's really been quite a bit of a swim upstream for those in the organization that believe that this is great. We do have individuals in the company who are advocates and supportive of these efforts, but we do have a great deal of work. And if you're thinking about bringing an initiative into your organization, you need a really strong support system for individuals that you bring in, and you really need the right supervisors or expectations from the wrong supervisors to do the right thing.
I'm going to add that the challenges are the same, especially in global companies. There are always individuals that they don't have the mindset to adapt to the culture of the company. So we did have this, and I'm sure every company might face this challenge of we do have the initiatives, we do have the support, but some people just choose to not adapt to the new culture, or to just stick to same mindset maybe. We try our best. We give support, we give mentorship, but I hope one day that people just make sure and think how amazing to shift this mindset to be open-minded to other cultures. And yeah.
I'll just add that it needs to be reflected in the culture. I think we can do more damage if we lead with diversity just for diversity's sake, because people see that. And it has to be almost an after the fact saying, hey, part of our success was because we had people from, different points of view. And I think something else you mentioned was we need to get out of this model where diversity is just gender and color of the skin. And it's easier said than done, but the diversity of experience, diversity of ideas, those kinds of things, I mean, that are very important too. But again, we have to be very careful. I've seen examples where if you lead with it too strongly, you're actually doing it a disservice.
Yeah. Well, glad you brought that point on, because I'm very interested to hear from the panel. How do you tied inclusion initiatives to the bottom line of an organization in terms of metrics? Do you have any proof that is driving revenue? Anything to add on that particular idea?
I'll just start on this end. We haven't yet, because again, back to my last point, we don't want to put too much pressure on it. I think it's you got to give it some room. You got to let it be organic. I think it's hard to say because we did this here that we're also a 145-year-old company, but you got to give these programs a little bit of time to kind of say, how do I make that linkage to the cash register? We are doing also initiatives in our distribution network, right? Because it's not just diversity in the home office or in corporate, but it's also in your distributors, your partners, your suppliers, et cetera, those things.
Metrics is a big part of every organization. I know Women in High Tech, when I was on the board a decade ago, the metrics were much smaller and we were well balanced. And then as we scaled and I rejoined the board years later, the metrics were different and we had some actions to take. We aspire to mirror the community that we serve. So we have to understand the women working in tech in Indiana, understand their makeup, and serve all of them. At NCWIT, I've got a bunch of materials with me, but my favorite piece of material is by the numbers, and it just goes through the nominal disparity of women in computing. And as we all know, we develop for every person, and we can't do that without diverse thought.
Yeah, I noticed that because we are on the same board, that the diverse board, adding a lot of valuable points and actions and having the awareness of what's missing and talking about it and taking actions. At Infosys, we do have, because we really care about the performance management and skill development, so we do have internal free, easy access to all employees to keep building and keep learning. And it's helping to just see this dashboard of like, okay, I'm taking this. This is assigned to me. This is what I'm learning. So always like knowledge is the key, I always say. So keep learning, keep educating yourself, keep the awareness going and taking action and speaking about it, not just one thought, is the group thoughts of having a mindset, open-minded people helps a lot.
Yeah, we have some metrics, but in terms of ROI, I just want you to think about something, right? Over the last 15 to 20 years, many large organizations and small organizations have started to outsource different aspects of the work that was not strategic. Well, what happened is that if you don't check, the cost of that outsourcing has increased tremendously. And you did that at some point strategically to say, that's probably going to be a better option than hiring a bunch of people, leading a department, dealing with personnel, HR issues. But if you check today, you'll see outsourcing has increased significantly. And actually, when you think about what you probably considered as something that you can outsource, may over the years may have become a valuable asset that you want to control, that you want to have in-house. And so I would just say, from just a real quick ROI, look at what you've outsourced. Look at who's doing work for you that may not work for your company, and think about an opportunity to hire and bring on the talent that we're talking about to the organization, because there might be a instant savings that pays for the programming over quickly. So,
or broader concerns like national security.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking about pharmaceuticals during COVID, you learned that most of the supply chain is outside the U.S. who are also dealing with COVID. So if you make a choice, your kid and my kid, this could be my kid. I mean, I don't care what the contract says. So I mean, a major issue. And how long does it take to rebuild an infrastructure to build pharmaceuticals? 15 years. We over-index for inflation. So my bad. Anyhow. Great. So we're going to ask two more questions before we open it up to audience questions. What's your big idea that's not being done now with respect to your company and inclusion? What's like if you were the max of the universe and you wanted to change Eli Lilly or insert name of your company, what would you do that you're not doing right now, and why?
Yeah. So with our long tradition, we also have a very strong tradition at recruiting at particular campuses, right? So obviously IU, Purdue, we're right there. We recruit for more than 7 or 8 functions. I think at Purdue, even 10 functions at IU and Purdue. And then we have a host of other colleges that we recruit at. My big idea is to create some platform where is university agnostic, right? Anyone can apply, anyone can consider, and then we have the uses of AI and other things to evaluate skill set and things of that nature, so that when we wake up tomorrow, 50% of our new employees are not from 1 university or 2 universities or 3, but we've incorporated this diversity across the spectrum. beyond just four-year traditional colleges, but community college and JUCOs, and we really identify a diverse talent pool across a wide spectrum of universities and institutions. It'll never happen, but that's my idea.
Did 10 Point staff hear that? Like, that sounds like a great value to customers there. Anyhow, Arwa?
Yeah, to not stick only to universities or just people who have a bachelor degree. I'm so glad that Infosys now hires people who just finished their associate. They don't have to wait till they finish their bachelor. But I do hope that there are a lot of diverse talent in high school, and they know that this is the way, this is the path we want to take. I hope we see companies that give opportunities to these students. Just because most of the technology companies, they do have training programs. So why not just wait till them to finish? They can start working and finish their education at the same time.
When it comes to computing in the younger kids, I like to help the VEX Robotics State Championship, and I get to go and I see mostly boys, and then I see the all-girl teams, and they're awesome. And then when I see the one girl on the team with the mixed teams, she's always doing documentation. No, she's not driving, she's not coding, she's writing, making the posters, and oh man, that gets me. But the all-girl teams is the chance that they have to drive, that they have to code. And my big ask, my big wish is we have to normalize this. They can't drop out. We need them. We need their diversity in thought. And there was a time when they belonged, and it turned somewhere around middle school and high school. And so in my long years of working on this, moving the needle, I keep going back and back and back and trying to find, where does this happen? Why does this happen? And what can we do about it?
I suppose my big idea would be to kind of address the no job without experience, no experience without a job. So the idea would be to almost make a clearinghouse across companies where you can actually externalize non-confidential projects and let call it the general public, call it academia, bring teams together across different companies, different colleges, different areas to say, let's crowdsource some of these ideas that are not mission critical, that don't have confidential stuff. There's a lot of commodity things all our companies do. These projects are kept internal. I think they kind of give people ideas, give students that are in school right now an opportunity to actually get some experience, crowdsource those things, and almost kind of like extended hackathons, if you will, right? And let them come together. But the ideas are seeded from groups of companies that are real ideas, real challenges that we face today.
Right, great. So let's just transition to audience questions. We have time for at least 5 to 6 of them. So let's see some hands, and we'll run a mic out to you. Who wants to go first? Yes, ma'am. What's that?
Thank you. My question is, what advice would you give to organizations that already kind of provide services that you all are providing now in-house? So we're working to get our students, our talent connected with you all, but it's getting a little bit more difficult because of increases or internal programs or things of that nature. So what would you propose that we do to kind of have the all-inclusive model so our students who aren't your typical talent are still being reviewed?
I'll just give a quick answer and pass it on. I think vocabulary is important, so speak our language, right? So I think when you approach us, you got to speak, whether you like it or not, corporate speak, right? Why is this important? Why should you take the call? What's the business case, right?
And I think those purposeful partnerships that you and I were talking about just last week with IWIT and Women in High Tech are important. We're all here for a reason. Most of those reasons align very, very closely. And like you said, we're all here. We all want to make this happen. We're not fighting each other, fighting for each other's resources. We all want to work towards the same goal. So finding those strategic partnerships where you can do something bigger than you and your own organization is is where I'm trying to focus.
Yeah, the partnerships, we can start with partnerships, and also companies can host and do tour for these students, introduce them, let them make connection at early before graduation. And I think it will help them know, like shadowing the job, like Infosys, we do host events for high school students or just from students from Ivy Tech, as Ariel knows. So it helps them. But we have to work all together. Like we can't just use one hand. We have to use both hands. So yeah.
Wow, there are several things I believe. So when, as my role in talent attraction, I always tell individuals that I'm not hiring, I'm not recruiting you. I may be recruiting you for today, but I may be recruiting you for tomorrow, for that next job. And so I think it's incumbent upon people who are interested in working for a specific company to really think about, is it the right next job, or maybe it's the job after that? And so there are things that you can take advantage of, students can take advantage of. Everything that we've heard our other panelists say would be those things to prepare. And then the other thing I'd like to add is that people are not as diligent as you'd like in the whole application technology space, because they always say, hey, Maurice, I applied for a job, it got turned down, I guess Lily doesn't like me. I'm like, no. I said, you need to apply for multiple jobs, right? You need to continue to look and apply and be savvy and look at your resume as a template, right? To adjust it based on the skills that you bring, may be more applicable to one job, but may not be as directly applicable to another job. And so you have to be able to adjust and make your resume and your story change, not because you're not being honest, but because there are things that someone might have done, you might have done that might not be pertinent for one particular role, but might be more applicable to another role. And so there's a variety of things that we could talk about in this space. So, so feel free to hit me up later. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do not take it personal.
Can I just build on one of your points? This is something that we've dealt with right now, which is we can spend 3-6 months looking for someone, or we can spend 3-6 months investing in someone and we'll have that person at the end of it. So I think your point about back to where the puck is going, I think have the conversation with us also, not what you need today, but what will you need in 6 to 12 months based on where the business plan is going.
And loving the ones you're with.
Good afternoon. Girls Who Code and Accenture before COVID did research, and that research showed that 50% of women by the age of 35 are leaving tech due to non-inclusive cultures. That wasn't even disaggregated by color. We also know through research recently done with Reboot Representation, I'm here, that we're seeing that the retention of women, of especially Black, Latina, and Asian American women, down. So we're investing a lot of money in recruiting, but we're not retaining that talent. So it's important to have a holistic strategy, not just we're going to hire, right? Because you can't just hire, and then you could create a permanent underclass if you don't emphasize the fact that there has to be more, there has to be retention. And also we know that when you look up, when you see us, you can be us. If you look up and there's no one who looks like you, do you want to stay? So my question for you is, as part of this, what is retention? Do you have a holistic strategy when it comes to recruitment and retention?
I think one of the most important things as leaders for each one of us is the career pathing of our teams, right? And that idea where it requires some self-reflection to say, are you spending 30, 40, maybe even 50% of your time as you get higher up in the organization just on human capital needs, to your point? But career pathing and talking to people about what their journey is and where do they want to go, but also exposing them to ideas. You know, we have a rotational program where we take people, and it's not just for high potentials, it's for everyone. So some organizations I've seen in the past, it's just the IPOs that get rotated. Those are just the IPOs that have kind of floated to the top. There's a lot of people underneath there that have given the right opportunities. So I think you have to be blind to the where people fit in the hierarchy from a performance perspective, and let other people rotate as well. So I mean, those are a couple of things we're doing right now.
I'm going to let you talk about all of the wonderful benefits I've had from an employee standpoint from the HR department.
So the most pivotal thing that we've ever done in DEI is something called the Women's Journey. And that took place about 8 or 9 years ago, where we actually looked at what barriers were preventing women from getting to the top of the organization. And the data was both, we did both qualitative, quantitative, and spent a ton of money on that. And the reason it's pivotal is that we subsequently have had journeys for other diverse populations, including Black, African American, Latino, Hispanic. We're now on our disability journey right now, as well as LGBTQ. And this is not just an exercise of just DEI and checking the box. Our executive committee members took those action steps and implemented within the organization. So if you check, our board, our women representation exceeds industry average. Our executive committee, which is the top tier team, exceeds industry averages. Our representation within the organization from entry level on up exceeds industry representation. And so that study, where we had a committed CEO who's committed and said we're going to make a change, really made the difference. And so we could talk, Tiffany and I could talk all day and night about the journey of our women at Eli Lilly and Company, but certainly it's documented, and would love to talk to you about it.
More questions. Let's go on this side of the column if we can. Yes, right here. I see in the back here. Malik is running with the mic. Thank you, Malik.
I just add while you're walking, those journeys are unfiltered, raw, and published inside of Lilly, and they're so powerful.
Yeah, that's a follow-up question on that. So do you interview women and they talk like this in a very free-form fashion, or how does it work actually?
Yeah, interview, and then we do interviews that are not, so anonymous interviews. And then we had a third-party firm put those interviews together and came out with some really thematic quotes and just put that in front of our senior leaders. And they were very, very, very powerful. And it just made the leaders say, we need to change, we need to do better in that space. And so it was that thought-provoking.
I have a couple questions. And sorry, I am cold. The first is, if you're an ethical company, why do you have a hackathon?
Just to clarify, hackathon is not referencing hacking the company. It's referencing getting people together in a fixed period of time and clearing their schedule, so it's not an edge of the desk exercise, but giving them a very compressed time to solve a solution. So the term is a little misleading. You're not hacking anything. More so, you're hacking the idea, so to speak. To go back to the origins of the word, which I think most people think of hacking a company or security or privacy, but it's actually, how do you hack an idea? Does that answer your question?
That's the same answer.
Absolutely. It's not about doing something unethical at all. It's about bringing together a bunch of nerds. And then one guy stands on the stage and says, hey, for 48 hours, we're going to solve this problem. Are you ready? They tell us the problem. And then we form little groups with our laptops, and we don't sleep for 2 days. And we stand up on stage and present a really quick, hacked together idea to solve this great community problem.
After a lot of Mountain Dew.
Yeah, lots of Mountain Dew.
Espresso shots, all of that.
Yeah, it is hacking the idea. Yes, absolutely.
Your second question.
And if you're thinking for diversity, which is what I'm thinking your D word stands for, and you're wanting more women in the rule. You can't make a person desire a career in tech if that's not what they're wanting. Are you offering training at 1150 Academy or any of these other tech places to older women as well?
Can you introduce yourself to Ariel from IWIT? The answer is yes. She asked the question earlier. There are many organizations out there that if you want to change careers and you want to get into this industry, there's funds and there's programs for you. Yeah.
And then the lady over there that mentioned the question, or that women of color are not staying in tech. Is that because they chose, or do you know the answer?
There's a lot of answers. And again, the NCWIT organization that I'm with has an army of minions, two armies of minions. One are social scientists that study the root cause of the gender bias at every level, all the way from kindergarten up to the C-suite. And then the other army are people like me that are spread across the nation, and we want to hear those reports and go home and do something about it. That dropping out of the workforce has always been a problem, and we've heard many reasons because of it. It could be family. It could be a change in dynamics. It could be you're tired of fighting. You're tired of being the only. You're tired of trying to fit in. And it's just exhausting. And the older you get, the harder it gets. And there's no one answer. And then post-COVID, you had the Great Resignation, and we're no different. We continued to drop out because of many, many, many factors.
Just want to add to that. We can reframe that as well, right? So there is definitely address why women are perhaps retention rates are lower. But if you say people have their valid reasons for doing so, the other thing we're looking at is on-ramps back in, right? So people may have very legitimate reasons. They've chosen their own reasons to be out of the workforce for 5, 7, 10 years. But how can we build those on-ramps to get back into the workforce as well? So that's another area where, yes, I think there's lots of people looking at the reasons why people are leaving. But if you accept that as it is, to say, hey, let's also make it easy to get back in.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, thanks to Dennis and the TechPoint team for putting this together today and to the panel. My name is Noel, and my question is really to the panel around the Mission 41K. And if you look at it as kind of a value chain of attracting talent, developing talent, and then placing talent and opportunities, where do you see kind of either the bottleneck in that value chain, or where would you double down your investment if you were to really kind of enable Mission 41K? Just curious to get your take on that. And it doesn't have to be in that aspect of maybe partnerships, or wherever you think would be the real double down to really enable Mission 41K. Thanks.
I would think of the opportunity as a startup. What would a startup do? Startup would say the first thing on the whiteboard would be addressable market. So I think rather than focusing on training people, then walking them through the pipeline, I would jump right to the end and say, what is my customer need? You talk a lot about customers. So what is your customer need? What's the addressable market? Then work back from there to say, what can I do today to do that? I think some of the pipelines today are focused more on, let's get people, trained on certain skills, then go find out where we can place them. I think there's ample opportunity for partnership to say, hey, One America, hey, Infosys, hey, Eli Lilly, in 12, 24, 36 months, what kind of needs will you have? And then let's define that as your addressable market, work back from there.
Noel, I might not address your full question, but I'll give some thought, some comments. I had a meeting with some individuals from Indiana University today, and the one thing I was telling them, I said, hey, it's great that you're trying to graduate students, right? I said, but think about this. Think about students acquiring those skills that you talked about after their second year, and providing a pathway to say, you're complete. Maybe it's an associate's degree. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just, here's a certification that you've acquired these skills that a company can use. And so I was telling the individuals that maybe we need to think about programs that might be 1 year, 1 year at Indiana University, 1 year at Indiana University in Indianapolis, where you're giving us those skills that we want for the jobs that we have. And then after that, let us do our own development to help them understand our industry and our business. And so I think it's a little bit of the first couple of stages of the pipeline, right, of getting them interested, but also building on his point on the right skills. So I think the one thing that I told them is that career counselors, when I talk to college students about what advice they're getting from career counselors, is outdated information. I wish they could take retirees like you from Lilly and individuals like that, and you all would be those individuals that would help these college students at either Ivy Tech or various places understand how to pursue a career, pursue a job, because it's going to give them really direct application on what a company looks for.
Really sounds like your idea of investing in a coding school, right?
I do want to address one thing, and it gets often overlooked, but it's critical to success. I think part of the curriculum, no matter how technical it is, should be the dark art of office politics. I think no matter, unless you're sitting in a closed room and only talking to a computer, you're going to be talking to somebody else. And I think I've seen people that have excellent skills, but they can't navigate the office environment. So I think that's critical to me.
Great. We're going to stop the audience questions here because I want to give our the esteemed panelists an opportunity to kind of give a closing statement, if you will. I'll start with mine, give you all some time to think. Solutions abound. I think back to the conversation I had with Skillstar, the company I mentioned earlier. They've had this amazing solution for upskilling military personnel, these young men and women. They're just doing one term of service for 3 to 4 years. The last year is meant to be transition. You get GI Bill, and they can actually spend half their time upskilling to whatever they're going to do post-military. I said, well, that's great. You have this amazing hybrid learning environment. What about underestimated talent pools? Kids that are failed STEM majors that are studying econ or poli-sci still have the ability, just, they couldn't get past inorganic chemistry. I know I couldn't, right? Doesn't mean that you're not a smart person, doesn't mean you're not eligible. And given the massive job gaps, and especially in tech space, we need as many horses as we can get. So let's figure out a different pathway. Well, guess what? We are now working with HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions across the American South. The same program they were doing for military and still doing for military personnel are now available to young people on campuses. So they get a bachelor's degree plus this other online certification that employees are recognizing, and they're having the same job opportunities as the few kids that are engineering. So that's just a really quick example of what's possible. So I want you all, my challenge to you all, to think about what you already have in your pocket. And maybe you're using that pocket knife in a different way to get you to a better solution. So let's start with whoever has mic. Okay, here we go.
What was the question?
This is your advice, your closing statement, advice to...
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. I think most things in life to me that I've seen comes down to communication. So let's just have a conversation. I think people can learn from each other. It's not like information is flowing, in one direction. So I just find, I think, sit down, let's share the challenges. Both sides have challenges. What are the opportunities? And have a conversation. I don't think there's one solution that fits all. It's been my experience.
Great, thank you.
I came here today as an employee of Eli Lilly, a hardcore nerd that loves the indie tech community and a supporter of women in STEM. If you know a little girl that has aspirations in growing up to be a programmer, I've got some materials for you. All she has to do is go to a website and register to apply for an award. After that, we can meet her, we can support her, and we can encourage her to keep going with scholarships, activities, everything I could throw at her to keep her in. And if you know a woman working in STEM that feels like she's alone and she needs that support network, so she's not one of the dropout statistics, point her towards women in high tech. And again, we would love to support her.
The statement that I would like to share is inclusivity in tech starts with the commitment to diversity.
When we expanded our into the skills first arena, one of the biggest barriers that some of our new hires had was this notion of imposter syndrome, right? They're in an organization, individuals with MD, PhD, variety of degrees, people who travel across the world on their vacation. And then we have individuals that we brought in that's never been out of Marion County, to be perfectly honest with you. And so my advice is, let's help build confidence in individuals that they deserve to be at the table. When we actually bring groups together, and I did this about 4 or 5 years ago, I brought all our Latino leaders in the city together. And I said, we have all these jobs, but we aren't getting applicants from your community. And I said, why? And one of the comments that came from that discussion is that our constituents, our community, they don't think they can work at Lilly. They don't think there's jobs at Lilly for them. And so what you can do is help people understand that all these great companies in the city, all these great organizations, that they belong, people belong, they belong there, and they should not give up, and they should try to interview, try to seek employment. Might not be the next job, but it could be the job after the next job. But please be encouraging to those communities.
Great. Please give this panel a hand, and thank you all so much.